and welcome back to Chatting with Chaz. I'm so happy you're here. Let me reintroduce myself for those of you that might not know me or you've tuned in for the first time. My name is Chaz Easterly. I'll be your host. I'm the creative director and founder of Linen Flax Co, a lifestyle brand founded here in Roswell, Georgia. Let me tell you about the last couple of episodes. Our first episode, I talked a little bit about my childhood and a lot about a traumatic life experience that really changed me. Episode 2, we talked about the redemption of that and how God started healing me and changing me and basically rebuilding me. And what he built me into was an entrepreneur, not only a mother, not only a daughter, not only a friend, but an entrepreneur, something I never really expected ever in my lifetime. I dreamed about being successful. I thought it would be as a wonderful mom, a caring mother, but I never dreamed it would be as a businesswoman. And so today we're going to talk a lot about that, about the rebuild of my life, and a lot about building a beautiful brand. I think building a brand really was a surprise to me because I didn't pursue to build a brand. It just kind of naturally evolved. We're going to talk about that evolution. And we're going to talk about how that evolution really changed me as a person. And had I not changed as a person, had I not gone through the healing, had I not gone through everything that I shared over episode 1 and 2, I do not think I would be here sitting on this couch today. All of those things really made me who I am. And really, it's the best version of myself to date. So let's dive in and let's talk about the beautiful life of an entrepreneur, someone who leaned in and really dove in, not knowing really much of anything about it. Let's start here. In 3rd grade, I remember my teacher came up to me and she said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" She gave me a blank piece of paper. She was an art teacher. And she said, "Just draw what you want to be." And Johnny next to me was a fireman, and someone to the left of me was a doctor and a nurse. And I just wrote my name. Now, my name, original given name, is Chastity Faith. I did not write chastity. I wrote Chaz in cursive, and I made a fancy Z. And I liked how the Z kind of finished it off, because with an S, it didn't. Little creative happening in 3rd grade. So the teacher comes back and she says, "What's this?" And I said, "This is going to be my store. I'm going to call it Chaz." Really Chaz, because I added a little hyphen and I thought it was fancy in 3rd grade. So here we are with these beautiful stores in Roswell, Georgia, an e-commerce storefront. How does this happen? So let me say, as a stay-at-home mom, when I was going through, I got married. I'd originally, let's briefly talk about last week. I talked about Hooters, then I went from Hooters to ministry. I mean, this progression is a little wild. And then ministry into being a full-time mom, loved being a stay-at-home mom. I was crafty with the kids. We did little things around the house. We were always having fun. My goal was to train them up in their faith, but also be a really fun mom. But I also wanted to create a beautiful environment. And I was always about creating moments in the home and creating beautiful spaces. Whether we had little or a lot, it was just making the best of everything. And I really learned that from my mom and dad growing up. So as I would create these moments and memories in our home, it was really I intentionally felt when they grew up, I wanted them to remember Christmas and how that felt. I wanted them to remember, movie night and how that felt on a sofa, in a cozy sofa with lights on dimmers and candles lit on the coffee table. I always wanted to create these environments that they would remember, and it wouldn't just be for that day, but when they grew up and they look back. And so with that passion, I was kind of just obsessed with it. And I think it was because of maybe my childhood and some of the things that maybe I didn't have and some of the fond memories that I did have that I did cherish. I wanted my kids to have that. So around 2008, my husband at the time, my children's father, he was changing his career path. And he had decided he just kind of wanted to retire at the age of 40. Now, we weren't really in a position to retire, but he wanted to just kind of dial back, and he wanted to go into ministry, and he was changing up his path. And so not only did I want to be a great mother, I really wanted to be a great wife, and I wanted to be a supportive wife and really fulfill that role. And that was my goal. I was all in, and I was the cheerleader wife, and I'm here, whatever you want to do, let's do it. So I was a people pleaser. Remember, we talked about that in the last episode. So as we started talking about what the next step was for him, we decided we would go meet and get a little counseling. And the counseling we get was from a friend of ours. He was a pastor, and he said, hey, I have a friend that is going to be in town, and she actually is kind of prophetic. And prophetic would mean that she will pray with you, and sometimes God gives her visions. And when he gives her visions, they're trackable. In his life, he has seen that the pastor, that when she would pray over him, things would come to pass. And he said, I mean, she's just trackable. And we thought, well, this is wild. We've never done anything like that. But he knew we were pursuing a purpose and a new direction in our lives. And that can be possibly a big move, leaving Florida, which is where my family was and where my kids' cousins were, and like everything was, to something unfamiliar and something different. So it was a little scary, and it was a big leap of faith. We wanted to be sure. So we thought, why not? Let's just go meet with this person. So one afternoon, we go to this office. It's upstairs, this tiny little office. We walk in, and this woman introduces herself, and we sit down, and we say who we are, and we introduce ourselves. And then she says, okay, we're going to pray. But before I pray, I'm going to press record, and I'm going to tape this prayer, because I want you to have this, and I want you to remember these things that we pray about. And we thought, okay, that's interesting. Okay. So we all bow our heads, we close our eyes. Now, I am there to be the supportive wife. I'm here to hear what God wants to do for my husband at the time. And I was just going to follow his lead and take care of the children and fulfill my role. And that was my role, to take care of the children and cheer him on. So she starts praying. And as she starts praying, she shifts in her prayers. And we had said we're praying for direction for him and where we should go and in these opportunities that he might have. And so she's praying, and she kind of prays over him. And then she turns and prays over me. She spends a lot of time praying over me. And she says things that I had never heard before, that I never uttered out of my mouth. But some of the things she said are important to hear here, because it was definitely a piece of me in that room that really opened my eyes for the first time. And as she prayed, she said things like this: you, Chaz, have a gift, and you have a gift of hospitality. You have a gift of inviting others into your life. And she said, God wants to use those gifts, and you have the gift of encouragement. And I see you encouraging people. And she said, standing at the gates and basically proclaiming God, proclaiming, all of his goodness and encouraging people in their faith. And then she also said that you have a very keen business sense. Now, I was a stay-at-home mom at the time, and, my work history was Hooters and ministry. But she said you have a very keen business sense, and that even leaned into my husband at the time and said, you need to listen to her, and you need to follow her direction in business because of her keen sense of business, and to pay attention to it. She also started saying that I had a keen sense for real estate and that I should pay attention to that. Then she started talking about that I would be working with linens and fine fabrics. And she started talking about having a gift in leadership. And she's saying these things. Now, my head's bowed, my eyes are closed, and I'm thinking, I don't know if we have the right person here. I don't know who she is talking about. Because remember, I didn't know my value. I didn't know my gifts. I didn't know my talents. I didn't know my worth. I knew that I was healing, and I knew that I was growing in confidence, and I knew that I was seeing in color, like I said last episode. Like things were clear, and I was feeling creative. So we end this prayer, and I'm like, wow. And she said a few other things that were really amazing. She also said, she mentioned Proverbs 31, which is an area of scripture. And she talked about me being a Proverbs 31 woman. And she prayed about that. And that was about being noble and wise, and that I had wisdom that came from God, and that I should really lean into it. So we left there, and I will say, I was like, wow, that was amazing. We get in the car, and I remember he turned to me at the time, and he's like, well, I don't know how trackable she is. And it was kind of like blown off. And I remember in my heart, I felt like, wow, that was really amazing. What if there's something that God has for me? Because I was really there for you. And then when he dismissed it, I was like, oh, yeah, you're probably right. It wasn't trackable. But I remembered it. And I remember she handed us the tape, and I kept the tape. He didn't keep the tape, but I kept that tape. I put it in my glove compartment in my car, and every now and then I would just kind of bring it out, and I press play, and I would listen to it. And I wondered, what would God have for me? And was there any truth in this? It felt like when she prayed that something was happening in my spirit, or was it just nonsense? But I kept the tape. Now let's fast forward. We end up leaving from Fort Lauderdale to Atlanta. Really big step for us. My husband at the time takes this job in Atlanta. And I remember as a realtor was driving us through from Atlanta to like Alpharetta to Milton to show us different locations to live, we were choosing basically our neighborhood around our children's school and where he would go to work. So we were in very specific areas, but they kept driving through this cute little downtown of Roswell. She never wanted to show us Roswell. She kept taking us to Alpharetta and Milton and like Sandy Springs, but we'd always have to drive through this cute little quiet, sleepy town at the time. And I thought every time we drove through there, I loved this little street called Canton Street. And I'm like, what is this place? I like this place. Oh no, you don't want to live in Roswell. So anyway, we end up living in Roswell. And I love the little downtown. I love the quiet Canton Street. It reminded me a lot of my childhood, Fairfield, Connecticut. There was a lot of history where the other towns she was showing us were very new. And I loved a little historic downtown. So we settled in Roswell, Georgia. And I was a stay-at-home mom and I was always with the kids and I was doing all the things. Well, now it's 2008 and we all know what happened in 2008. 2008, it was a recession. We had just moved here. We were building a home. We were in a rental as we were building our dream home, which became a nightmare. The builder went bankrupt. It went under. And we basically had to build the house twice. So I remember in the stress of that financial stress, we had to pull our kids out of private school, the very school that we came here for. And I remember my husband one day during one of our arguments, because, there was lots of challenges before the financial issues. Now there's financial issues and it's just multiplying. And anytime kind of a pattern would go, anytime something would go wrong, it would kind of become my fault. And so the recession and the house building, which I did lean in and I did say, I don't trust this builder, but my opinion wasn't really heard. But it was like, hey, he said, I'm not fixing this. So you need to go figure something out. And in the middle of an argument one Sunday afternoon, he's like, you need to go get a job and don't come home until you have one. Now, like I said, Hooters, stay-at-home mom ministry, where am I going to get a job? I don't exactly have a resume. I don't have a ton of confidence, but I'm going to come back home with a job. So I get in my car, I drive down that cute little Canton Street that pulled me into Roswell, Georgia, and I went knocking on several little storefronts' doors. A lot of the places on Canton Street in 2008 were quiet little mom and pop shops, restaurants. And so as I went and knocked, they weren't really hiring. It's 2008, recession. So I just knocked and knocked and knocked and got denied. And it was embarrassing. And I thought, gosh, I can't even get a job to like clean up the store, to run a cash register, nothing. I couldn't get anything. And I got in the car. And as I drove back down Canton Street, I just started crying. And I said, God, if I have to go home with a job, and if you see anything in me, if you have any value in me, can you just show me, help me? Like, I've got to figure something out. And I'm just giving you my life, and whatever you want to do with me, just do it. But I need a job. And I was embarrassed. I was crying to him saying, God, just show up for me. So I drove. It was like just an idea, go to Pottery Barn. I went to Pottery Barn. I had in my front seat a picture of my kids because I had to turn it into the school the next day. And so before I got out of the car, I grabbed that picture. I walked in. I met the store manager. I had this picture. And I said, hey, I need a job. I'll ring people up. I'll work in the stock room. I love home. I love interiors. And I love my kids. And I showed her a picture. And I said, if you can just get me a job. And she goes, you know what? I like you. You're hired. I got hired on the spot at Pottery Barn. And that is where my 3-year job at Pottery Barn started and began. It started with me just doing what I said. I said I would ring people up. Well, what's funny is I'm not tech savvy. So that was not my gift and talent. What I shortly realized is my talent was people. And they didn't want me behind the cash register. They wanted me talking with people because I was selling everything. I loved Pottery Barn. I had a passion for home. I had a passion for pillows. I had a passion for making spaces cozy. So people would walk in and I can sell them anything because I believed in it. And so shortly thereafter, they said Pottery Barn wants to launch a design program. And because I was selling so much and putting looks together just naturally and organically, they said, we think you'd be perfect because we needed a personality and we needed someone with design skills. So I launched the design program with Pottery Barn. But then as I ended up having a clientele that grew, it started off with you'd only give them one room. You go to their home, you'd assess their home, and then you put together a room. And I was just kind of crushing it. I was loving it. I was all in. But then the people wanted me to do another room and another room, and they wanted me to do their whole house, and became kind of an issue with Pottery Barn. So shortly I had a list, and I had every day that I came into my shift, there was like 5 or 6 appointments. This was complimentary. People were loving it. And then they were asking to hire me on the side. I asked Pottery Barn if that was okay, and they said that was fine. I stayed there 3 years. And what I learned at Pottery Barn, because I didn't have the confidence yet to leave Pottery Barn, I thought, well, maybe I could start my own business, but really, can I? I was making $9 an hour. I worked there for 3 years, and I learned how to run a store. I didn't realize I was going to need that, but I learned the back end. I learned the front end. I learned customer issues. I learned customer service. I learned stock issues. I learned how to manage inventory. I did every part from sweeping to cleaning to changing the garbage cans at the end of the shift. I learned every part of how to operate a store. I also learned how to do interior design. I also learned how to teach classes there. They had me starting classes on Sundays, and I would get people to come into the store and shop by hosting these classes. I would bring muffins and orange juice, and we would talk shop for about an hour before the store opened. Started with 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, 20 people, 30 people at a time. So I was doing all the things, and you'll see how that really helped me in the future. So I get the courage finally one day to leave Pottery Barn. And I'm going to step out because now I have this list of people that want to work with me, and I'm going to start my own company, Chaz Easterly Design. So I leave Pottery Barn, I start this little company, and it takes off. I hire one of my best friends because I am not technically savvy, like I said earlier, and I don't even know how to make an invoice. And I ended up getting this big client who had this huge home and a big business, and he likes weekly invoices. And I'm like, how do you do that? So I hired her. She was making weekly invoices for me. And then we had to hire more help. And next thing you know, I was hiring my neighbor across the street. And this is becoming a legitimate business. And I'm almost as surprised as anyone. So I'm doing it all the design by myself. My friend occasionally helping with invoicing and billing. We didn't know what we were doing, but we were just doing the best we can, but it was growing rapidly. So as it was growing, I thought, I never really wanted this business just to be about me. I knew that this was a gift God had given me. I remembered the prayer I prayed driving down Canton Street. I remembered, the confidence I struggled with. And I knew that this was something he was building me for. So I wanted to change the name. So as I was thinking about that, it was New Year's Eve one night, and I remember we were in a cabin in Kentucky. The kids were downstairs. Everybody was downstairs, and I was upstairs in a loft by myself. And I had a journal, and I would occasionally journal my thoughts and my prayers. And that night, it was like God just started speaking to me. And I was just writing like crazy. And it was that I need to get a website, and I need, this business was getting busy. I need to get a website. I need to get a furniture line. I needed to invite people into my home, and I needed to show them how I style my home, because I would show people on Facebook, like take little pictures, and people were loving it. This was before Instagram. And I'm like, okay, I need to figure out social media. I keep hearing about social media, and I'm just writing about all these things that I need to do. And I was like blown away, and it was a list, and there were so many things on the list. And I remember the next morning I woke up and I shared with my husband at the time, and I'm like, listen, I'm talking like with such excitement, and it's spirited. I'm like, I can't even believe to tell you what I'm about to tell you. Just buckle up. This is big. This is what's going to happen. This is what I'm going to do. I see it all. It's real, and it's a vision, and I had to start making the steps, and I think I should start here and there. And I was like on fire, and he was like, yeah, I don't know about that. No. And it was just like squashed. But it's funny, that would happen occasionally. a lot. But this time I couldn't let it go. It was beyond his opinion or anyone's opinion. It was something that I had to do. It was a call. And I kind of submitted and I was quiet, but I couldn't let it go. And so I kept making moves. I kept working. I kept walking forward with Chaz Easterly Design. I kept getting new clients. I kept moving, but I just knew. So one day I was creating a beautiful custom table for a client. And when I went to go see my friend Clay, I've talked to you about rustic trades before. And when I went to go visit him, he was in a house and he shared space with this guy. And when I walked in to see him, it was actually the first time I met Clay. We hit it off right away. And then he introduces me to his friend in the back, his friend named Mac. And he's like, this is Mac. You got to meet him. He's fantastic. He builds beautiful websites. And I'm like, ding, 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 ding. And as he's there in this office, he's working on this beautiful website for a client. And it's beautiful. I think it was for a friend of mine that I now do work with, a builder. And it was a beautiful website. And he'd had beautiful home design on this website. So I could see what it looked like, a website with home design. And I thought right there, Mac, my name is Chaz. How are you? Can you build me a website? I mean, it was that fast. And he was like, yes. We hit it off. I started telling him my vision and that quickening I had in my spirit. He had it. And he was like, oh, you've got something. This is incredible. And he dove right in. So we were dreaming and scheming. And I said, okay, how much money do I need to get a website? And he told me, and it was a lot. And I said, okay, I can't do it right now, but I'm going to work my butt off and I'm going to come back and you're going to do my website. He's like, listen, I'm going to start working on it because I believe in you. Like, I just can see it. He's like, so I'm going to start working on it. We'll get to that, which that's crazy too. So I was working. I had to get ideas of how can I get this website. So I decided I am going to change the name of my business. I'm going to have a launch party. I'm going to open my personal home. I'm going to invite strangers in. I'm going to put an invitation on Facebook. I'm going to charge like $10 just to get people to come in. And the $10 will be for refreshments. And I'm going to talk to them about design, my love, my passion. And we're going to start this up. Now, all good ideas, a little crazy, a little out of the box, right? But I have to tell you, I had this burning desire, and there's a piece I forgot of this puzzle. I had this burning desire because I had built our family home. I built a home in Florida, and I built this new house alongside the builder. And I designed it from finishes to bathrooms to tiles to everything, flooring. And I remember on the second house, the nightmare house, I remember when the builder came in to photograph it. He was very proud of it. He had a photographer with him and he came to me and he said, Chaz, I just have to tell you, you have such a gift and you have such a passion for this. I don't know why you're not making this a business. And just like the woman who prayed for me, I remember he said that. That same day, the photographer came up to me and she's like, listen, I don't really know you, but I'm taking pictures and I do this a lot for designers. And I can't believe you're not an interior designer. And she put her hands on my shoulder and she said, if you do not do this, it's a sin because you have a gift and you're not using it. She went further to say, if God gives you a gift and you put it on the shelf and don't use it, you're basically being disobedient. Well, I didn't want to be disobedient. So these things I've locked onto and I remembered. So as I was thinking of all these crazy ideas, like opening our home and setting it up like a store and inviting strangers in from Facebook, when I'm thinking about, I need a furniture line, but I don't even have access to a furniture maker. I kept believing these words that people shared because I believed they were heaven sent. I believed that they were words that God was trying to speak to me with. So these crazy ideas, when I would speak them and people around me, my husband at the time was like not believing them. I'm like, but these strangers are believing in me. And I believe I'm believing in me. Like, I believe this is something I have to do and I have to do it. I just have to do it. And if I fail, I'll fail, but I don't think I will because I believe this is a God thing. So now there's so many things. I'm going to look at my list. There's so many things. I end up saying, it's time, Mac. I'm going to build this website. He's like, well, we need a name. What is the name? And I said, I think I have a name. And I was rolling a couple of things around. He's like, well, let's meet on Monday. Let's get the name and we're going to start on your social media and we're going to start on your website, but we need a name. So I go to church on Sunday and I'm sitting there at church and the pastor's speaking. I'm not really paying attention to what he's saying, and I'm thinking about the name. And I open up my Bible, and I happen to open up to Proverbs 31. And I was reading Proverbs 31, and I was reading about a woman, the Proverbs 31 woman, and how I always read about her is that she was a very submissive wife and a supportive wife. And she was known at the city gates because of how her husband spoke about her, because how she praised him. And it was always about a supportive role. When I read about her that day, I read about her and she looked like a businesswoman. I read that she had maidservants and that she led them and that she woke up early in the morning and she worked really hard before the sun came up. And she worked really hard as the sun went down and her lamp was always on. And she would buy fields and she would assess the fields and she would assess the crops. And she was a businesswoman. She knew the value of land. And then I started reading the Cliff Notes in my Bible and they started talking about her like this is the first picture of an entrepreneur, is a woman in the Bible who I always thought was just a wife. She was not. She had many hats. She was a leader and she was an entrepreneur. So that gave me a lot of confidence. Now, at that time when I was working Chaz Easterly Design, I was working at Pottery Barn, I fell in love with linen. I loved linen. So I loved the name linen. And then as I was reading the notes, I was reading about the linen that she worked with linens, fine linens. Remember the woman that prayed over me talked about me working with fine linens? She talked about Proverbs 31. It was all connecting. And then I remembered seeing this word flax. And this is a funny story, but I remember Sarah Blakely, she started Spangs. And one of the things when she was looking for a name, she wanted something that ended with an X because it's supposed to help with brand recognition. And I remembered that. And I was like, flax, there's an X. But I really didn't know the whole meaning, but I liked the way it sounded, linen and flax. I loved the ampersand. And I thought that was a really pretty, way of doing it. So I was like linen, ampersand, flax, linen and flax, flax and linen. So it was rolling over my thoughts. Next morning, I meet with Mac, my friend that was working with me at the time, was sitting at the table, Dina. She knew my story, the story I shared over the past couple episodes. And so as we're sitting there, Mac's like, so what's the name? And I'm like, linen and flax. And he's like, linen and flax? I'm like, linen and flax. He's like, linen and flax. I'm like, linen and flax. Silence. He's on his computer and he's typing and he's like, And I'm like, what's that mean? And he's like, linen. It's the process of refinement. It's like, do you know the process of linen? And I'm like, not really. He's like, well, linen has to be stripped down. And he starts reading this description and it's stripped and it's broken. And then it goes through this laborious process and it takes time. Remember we talked about this evolution of me? It's been 30 years. It's been a process of healing. I've been stripped. I have gone through it. And so he starts he doesn't know anything about my story and he starts talking about this process. He goes, and what's interesting, that flax is something you would never really choose. It's something that really didn't have a lot of value. But when it's stripped down and the fibers down to the core, then it's turned into this beautiful linen. And I just thought that's my life story. That is what it has happened. It's like I've been stripped down. I've gone through this really difficult process. It's laborious. It's long. It's not quick. And then it turns into something beautiful. And I really knew that God was in the business of making something beautiful. And I knew he was doing that in my life. He was taking a mess and making it beautiful. So I knew in that moment when he read the description, linen and flax was the name of this new beautiful brand that I was going to build. And ultimately he was building through me. So Linen and Flax was born at that table that day. And we launched our business in 2015. I opened the doors of my personal home and I invited strangers in and I had it beautifully decorated. And I ended up getting a furniture line. I met this guy, random. It's not critical to the story, but I met him on a Facebook ad. He was selling furniture and I needed chairs for a client. And I went down in my Sequoia to pick him up because I was a one-woman show. And when I met him, he was like, "You are just a firecracker." And he was telling me that, I'm telling you, you have, in just a short conversation, he's like, "You have a gift and you know what you want." And I said, "Well, can you help me make a furniture line?" Because he was in the business of furniture. He was my first contact, my first connection. And when he showed up at my house, the day I opened my doors, he had a tractor trailer full of linen and flax furniture, my first custom line. It's a whole nother story. We filled my house. We invited the people in. Everything sold out, all the furniture. People kept coming back to the house the next day, thinking it was a store because word got out that it had beautiful furniture and a beautiful design aesthetic. And really, Linen and Flax was born in my living room. So I knew quickly that this was special. And again, people would show up at our door and I thought, gosh, it would be great to have a home store. So one day I was driving down Canton Street. Remember that street that I drove down where I didn't think I had any value. I didn't think I had any worth. I didn't think I had any gifts. I didn't think I had any talents. I'm driving down that street and I see this cute little white house with a for rent sign. My assistant was in my passenger seat. We were headed to an appointment. I pulled in. She's like, "What are you doing?" She knows I always had these crazy ideas. I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's what I'm doing." I walked in and I'm like, "I'll take it." I did call my husband at the time and I said, "Hey, there's the perfect store. You know, people are showing up at our door. I think there's a need for a home store on Canton Street." There was no home store. And I'm like, "I think it would be successful. And I just know I'm supposed to get it. I have to do it." And he said, "No." And I'm like, "But I have to do it." And he's like, "You could do it, but I don't want any part of it," because it was risky. And so I was like, okay, so I decided I was going to do it. And that was very uncomfortable because I wanted to go into this as a partnership together as a family. I think that's how you should do it, especially a Christian family. But I just knew I couldn't not do it. I remember calling my dad one day and I was struggling because, there was tension in the marriage and I really felt this passion to do it. And it was kind of like the woman said, the photographer, if I didn't do it, I felt like I was disobedient. It was that strong. And I was talking to my dad about it and he said, "You know what, kid, you got to do it while you're young. You can't wait till the kids were grown," because that's what I thought I had to do. I could only be a mom and not a businesswoman. And he's like, "But if you wait, you'll be like 50 years old by the time they graduate." He's like, "That's going to be so much harder. You're 40 now." So I decided to do it. Again, super uncomfortable. I did it. I took the little 900 square foot store on Canton Street. We opened from the day I found it. 3 weeks later, I didn't have access to market at this time. I didn't have access to goods, but in those 3 weeks, I figured it out. I had a small team, 3 or 4 people that worked for me, mostly neighbors and friends, moms that we were just kind of working part-time, trying to figure it out. And we put together that store in 3 weeks. I was there from early morning till late at night. I remember I wasn't really planning for this. It was all just kind of happening fast and I was running out of money. And I went to my husband and I said, "I just need a little help. I need a little support." Because I think, I didn't budget it properly. It cost more than I thought with construction and I need merchandise, but and he was like, I remember being on our beautiful front porch and got into a really big fight. And he was like, "No, I'm not doing it. You're on your own. This is risky. I'm not behind this." Basically like, "You decide to do this, you got to figure it out." And, all the history with my parents, they were visiting at the time and they saw that I was just so upset. And I was like, gosh, I really thought I had this. And I guess I don't, because I don't know if I could get the inventory I need. They came in and they were like, "Listen, we don't have much, but we're going to give you our credit card and you just go get what you can and you do what you can. And we'll give you everything we can to make sure your dream will come true, because we know that you are passionate about this. We know this is a big dream and we believe in you and we know you can do it." So they gave me their Disney card because they would get Disney points. And they were pretty excited about that. I went to market and I actually saw a rep today when I was shopping and I'm like, "Julia, you're my first rep. Do you remember the red Disney card I gave to you?" And I said, "I don't know how much is on it, but let's get as much as we can." I mean, that's how I started this business. It was on a whim and on a prayer with a lot of confidence that I knew that God was for me, who could be against me, and that I could do it because he had my back. I knew that God had my back. And there's a lot of confidence when you have that. So I opened those doors. There was a line around the corner on grand opening day. I couldn't believe it. I was blown away. That little Facebook page, that one time that I opened my home, people started hearing about me and hearing about Linen and Flax. A lot of people think we are now 2024. This was 2015. A lot of people think that this was a fast overnight success, but this was not. This was 30 years in the making. This didn't happen with the opening of Linen and Flax in 2015. This happened with the evolution of a girl who didn't think she had a lot of value or worth, who didn't ever think she was enough. If I didn't think I was enough for marriage, I didn't think I was enough to open a storefront, a brick and mortar on my own. I didn't have a high school diploma. I didn't have a college degree. I didn't go to design school. But you know what I had? I had grit, and I had a lot of hustle, and I had a lot of confidence that I had a really big God for a small girl that believed big. And I believed big in these dreams because I knew these dreams came from Him. I knew these visions came from Him. I was confident in that. If I had just believed in myself, I probably wouldn't be where I am today, but I believed that it was beyond me. I believed it was God moving in me and through me for the love of people and the love of home. My kids inspired me too. Let me not end this without saying this. My 3 children, I knew there was college ahead. I needed to get them to college. I knew that I wanted to provide. I knew that things were tight in our home and that I had to jump in. So when I started with interior design, I thought there was an opportunity with this home store and that would help our family. So I did not do this out of any selfish ambition. It was to serve and to help. And I was thinking I was going to save my marriage because if I fixed the money problem, then I would fix our problems. But it's never just about money, right? So I opened this store. Home store is looking good. I'm busting it. I'm not really taking care of myself. I'm stressed to the max. I'm still raising my kids. I don't have a nanny. I don't have a cook. I don't have anyone cleaning the house. I'm still doing all those things and trying to build this brand. I didn't even look at it as a brand at this time. It was an interior design business, and then it was a little home store. Well, then one night I was working at the home store and I closed shop Saturday night. And when I locked the doors, I got in my car and I pulled out and I drove up the street maybe 20 feet. And I saw a for rent sign across the street. And I'm like, that's interesting. We opened and it was successful really fast. And it was a tiny store. It was 900 square feet. We felt growing pains immediately. We had no back room. We had a small little bathroom. We didn't have a place to really do design. We were trying to pack a lot in a very small space. So we got a warehouse close by pretty shortly after we started Linen and Flax. But the warehouse even was busting the seams. We were turning inventory over very quickly out of that little 900 square foot house. Actually, it was unbelievable. No one anticipated it. So we took that warehouse, we built a barn inside, created a secondary store just to not have to move the inventory so much. And we would open that store on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays in a warehouse with a barn built inside of it. I mean, thinking outside of the box, but we were trying to accommodate the people. We were trying to accommodate the staff because we didn't have room to put this inventory back and forth. There were semi trucks on Canton Street, which you're really not supposed to have. So we had to relocate that. So that was a problem. So when I saw the for rent sign, I thought, okay, it's a bigger space. That would be really helpful. It would help our staff. It would help our customers. It would help the problem with the warehouse. Maybe we don't have to do the barn because not only did we build a barn in this warehouse, we were still receiving major freights of inventory weekly. So we'd have to process all the inventory. And I mean, I had women. It was all women. I had MK who was like 60 unloading pallets that were, 10 feet high. It was small. It was grassroots. It was women working part-time and being moms and doing everything we could to make this work. It grows so fast that these part-time moms were like, this isn't what I signed up for. So we had to make changes. I took that space on Canton Street. It was double the size. We were now at about 2,000 square feet. And I thought, that's perfect. That'll be a great home store. We'll keep our existing warehouse. But what am I going to do with that cute little store that we just got? And we've only been in there a year and a half. I don't want to let it go. I'm attached to it. That was my first brick and mortar. So I thought, what could I do? Well, while I'm building this brand, I discovered Instagram. And when I was on Instagram, I was loading beautiful gallery pictures. And you all liked the pictures, but we weren't really gaining followers or momentum at all. It was just flat and beautiful and a gallery, basically. But Mac, remember the website guy? He was still in my life and he just really believed in me. He's always been a cheerleader. And he said, Chaz, you need to get on Instagram. He's like, you need to do this thing called stories. He's like, I know you and you're a storyteller and you love people and you have a great personality. They need to see you. They're seeing pretty pictures of design, but they need to engage with a person and you're the person they need to engage with. So he goes, start talking on the camera. I'm like, Mac, I can't do that. Now, we'll talk about my health journey later, but I wasn't feeling good in my skin. Stress has taken a toll. I gained a lot of weight. I'm not feeling good. I don't want to be in front of the camera. That's like the last place I want to be in front of. So he's like, it doesn't matter. It's not about that. It's about your personality. It's about your heart. Get on the camera. So he kept pushing and prompting. And one day I did a story, but I like hid behind a lampshade. And then he called me and he's like, that's not what I'm talking about. I did like a boomerang. He goes, I want you to sit in your car. I want you to roll up the windows and I want you to talk about your kids. That's what you're most comfortable talking about. I want you to talk about recipes. I want you to talk about what you're doing tomorrow. You're busy. You're on the move. Let people see what it looks like to build a brand. And so that's what I did. I sat in my car, which I still do to this day, and I started talking to you. I started talking to you about building this brand, the highs, the lows, the stress. I started talking to you about my kids and their football game and Jacqueline cheerleading. I started talking to you about football. I started talking to you about marriage. I started talking to you about how hard marriage is. We ended up talking about divorce. We ended up talking about the fire that happened. We ended up talking about dropping our kids off at college. We ended up meeting and becoming friends here. And that really changed the business. While I was talking to you, you were noticing what I was wearing. And you'd say, what is that shirt? I need your shirt. What is your lipstick? Where'd you get those earrings? And so when I had that little space on Canton Street that I didn't know what to do with, I thought, what about an apparel store? You're always asking me what I'm wearing. So I called my friend, Jody. She's a whole nother story, but Jody was another huge cheerleader in my life. And she really believed in me. She believed in Linen Flax. She believed in my design aesthetic. She was one of my first clients. She believed that I should have a home store. One of the things she told me was, why are people going to Magnolia when you can just do it here in Canton, on Canton Street? And when I decided to do apparel, I called her and I said, Jody, I have an idea. And I think you're the perfect person to be my buyer because she loved clothes. She loves to shop. She's a great shopper. So Jody was like, let's do it. Now, Jody was the only one who thought we should do it. Everyone thought it was a bad idea. They're like, what do you know about apparel? And I'm like, what did I know about interior design? What did I know about home goods? What did I know about any of this, about having a brick and mortar? But we figured it out from what a POS system was to what Instagram was to what stories was. We figured it out. We'll figure this out. We opened Linen Flax Apparel on March 16, 2017. So now we have 2 stores on Canton Street. Again, that same street that I drove down and thought, this would be a great place to live. I didn't know it'd be such a great place to run a business and to start a business. Roswell has been exceptional. They have been supportive. The people, the community, the government, everyone has had our back. It's been an incredible place to do business. We then moved our headquarters, our little warehouse. We outgrew that. We moved down the road about 3 miles to a 10,000 square foot headquarters. And when we had some space, I'm like, well, hey, why don't we build a real website, like a big website? And why don't we do e-commerce? Because Instagram now, we're talking to people in California, Connecticut, Florida, Tennessee, Missouri. We're talking to Texas. We're talking to everybody. And they are seeing all of our beautiful product in our little stores on Canton Street, but they can't get it. So we built this amazing e-commerce website. And we actually launched that website when we were at our original location. I had one person doing fulfillment. Again, how do you do that? We didn't know. It was a great idea. I was like, let's get a website. And everyone that worked for me is like, no. How? And I'm like, we can do it because we can do hard things. We figured it out. We hired the right people. We hired the right person to build a website. We launched our website. It took off. It was incredible. We have now hit every state and in lots of different countries. It's been unbelievable. And now we're a little bit in everybody's home, from the East Coast to the West Coast. And basically Linen Flax comes to your door now. So that's a beautiful thing. And the last thing that we built, so far to date is this beautiful leisure property in Rosemary Beach, Florida. A lot of you would follow me when I'd go with my family to Rosemary Beach, and you loved it. And every time I would go there, you would ask me about it, and you wanted to know every little detail, from where I took my bike, where we went on bike rides, to where we're staying. And anytime I would go on vacation with my family, you would ask where we were staying. So just like the apparel store, just like the interior design, anytime you asked for something, I would try to meet the need. So I remember one vacation I went on, and you loved this hotel, and you asked me about it. And I went to the manager and I said, can I get a code? I'd never done that before. And can I tell my people about this hotel? And he's like, sure. And I'm like, well, can I get a code so you can track it? Like, can we do this? And he was like, well, we can, but let me just say this. Just tell me if you have someone that wants to book it, just send me a screenshot instead of doing a code, because you're probably not going to get a lot of people booking, because a lot of influencers do this, but they'll only get like 5 or 6 bookings. It's not really worth it to do the whole code thing. So just screenshot the people that are interested, and I'll take care of it. And I'm like, okay. So I tell you all, hey, if you're interested, I can give you a discount. Let me know. And it was hundreds of people. I couldn't keep up with it. I kept blowing up his phone, screenshotting, sending him all the things. He finally said, we got to shut this down. I can't take it. He goes, but who are you? What is the deal? And I'm like, well, I just have this little Instagram. And it really wasn't huge at the time. But the people that were here were invested, and they believed in it. And he was like, I mean, this is unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. So he sent me to another hotel. He's like, go tell him about this hotel in Maine. And remember, I went to Maine, and you wanted to know everything about that. So then I started thinking, why am I sending people to Maine, to the Keys? I should just get a place that we could all go to on vacation together. So I saved and I found a beautiful home in Rosemary Beach, Florida, a place that my family always loved, and a place that you loved that I went to, and I opened it up to you. And when I decided to open it up to you, I thought, I'm going to create a beautiful linen and flax experience. So when you come to that home, you not only have a beautiful vacation, but you stay in a space that feels like linen and flax. You sit in our sofas, you sit in our chairs, you sit around our table, you go in our lounges by the pool, you hang, from a swing. That's what I wanted to create. And so our leisure cottage in Rosemary Beach was born. So now we have this beautiful lifestyle brand. And then we have this beautiful website that you can find all the things on. And we have this amazing Instagram page that has everything, and it's shoppable. And we created this beautiful lifestyle brand. And we created it for you. Again, something that was out of a mess became beautiful. And we're still in the process of making lives beautiful through your homes, through your apparel, in your closet, and through your vacations, and creating memories with your family. It's everything that I love. And I believe it's everything that you love too. God gave me this space. He gave me this platform. He gave me this business. And I believe that I just need to be a good steward of it. So the way I want to steward this business is with passion, with a purpose, and a purpose beyond just selling pillows. I want to be a part of your life. I want to inspire you on the daily. I want to inspire you to live your best life. Not only a beautiful life and a cozy life, but a confident life. And I hope that through Linen and Flax, that you find all these things: inspiration, confidence, comfort, and all the things beautiful, and that you create the life you love in a beautiful way. So follow us on Instagram. You can see our daily updates. We do lots of inspiration there, from how many pillows to put on a sectional, to what to put on your mantle, to what outfit looks best for a girl like you. Follow us at Linen Flax Co. on Instagram. Also Chatting with Chaz. Follow us on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. Also connect with us on our website, www.linenandflax.com. We also have a blog there. I mean, let me tell you, we have all the things for all the people. We look forward to getting to know you better. And I hope that you discover your purpose. I hope that through me discovering mine, maybe you heard something here for you today. Maybe you heard that you don't have to have a diploma. Maybe you heard that you don't have to have a college degree. Maybe you heard that you don't have to just be fill in the blank. Maybe you heard that you have a purpose and you have a calling, and that maybe fear has held you back. But let me just encourage you. Just go for it. Just do it. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't need the roadmap. You just need to take one step at a time, one brick at a time, one problem at a time, and you solve it. And then the more you solve those problems, the more you're confident to solve the next one. And then nothing scares me. Now I'm like, bring it. What are we going to do next? And that's what we'll talk about. What's next? The next chapters with Linen and Flax. Looking forward to sitting with you on the couch, chatting with Chaz.